As I'm privileged to sit here in Dr. Viscardi's office, surrounded by memories and all of his artifacts, I'm reminded that we all make regular trips here to learn about his life and legacy and his impact on Americans with disabilities. In 1952, Dr. Viscardi founded our historic organization in a garage in West Hempstead. A decade later, he founded our school, the first ever school to guarantee inclusion for kids with disability. The Viscardi Center was started through Dr. Viscardi's work with military veterans who were returning with service-connected disabilities from World War II and the Korean conflict. Dr. Viscardi's seminal work around inclusion for individuals with disabilities really set the frame for what would be decades of activism and civil rights legislation that protected the rights and opportunities of Americans with disabilities.
I was just in awe of how tireless he was in fighting for people with disabilities. He could relate to it himself because he had a disability, and I think he had a major impact. The American for Disabilities Act was Hank Viscardi.
I think he would recognize the advancement that's been done. He would be very proud of what the Viscardi Center and his legacy has done.
For 21 years, he walked on stumps, and I found that incredibly challenging. He said I knew that progress was coming, and he was then fitted for prosthesis, and he was able to walk normally for the first time. And I thought that was so impressive. And he had a drive within him that was extremely unusual.
I think as someone that was born without legs, that ultimately found his way to where he was in this leadership role, in this advocacy role, in this inspirational role, that he learned firsthand that nothing's impossible. That's a message for anybody with a disability.
Hank was a very interesting person. He was tough, relentless in his pursuit and what he wanted to accomplish. He had a great personality, he had a great sense of humor, but he was very focused. Hank was a believer in personal contact. He didn't lead from inside his office. The way I got involved, they invited me to sports night. When I first went there in 1969, it was a small event. We had a little buffet dinner, and many of the people wanted a picture with the celebrities, so we bought a couple of dozen Polaroid cameras. Each celebrity had a host, so you could walk up and get your photo taken, and they'd print the Polaroid and hand it to you. I got to meet Hank. I spent some time with him. I learned a little bit about the center, and then he asked me if I would be on the sports night committee. So I said, okay. Went on the sports night committee and started to build the event with different ideas. I went to 50 sports nights in a row over 50 years. Some of the sports nights we raised almost $4 million. If you figure out how good that is, in 3 hours in a gymnasium. It's one of the most successful events, one of our key roles in how the center's been able to be expanded.
He was absolutely the most wonderful storyteller I ever came across in my life. It's amazing when you see somebody speak and you can't hear a pin drop in the room. That's an effective speaker, and that was Hank.
This audience would be disappointed if I didn't say that after listening to your kind words, I can hardly wait to hear what I have to say.
He was charismatic because of the fact that he had a disability and he overcame that disability. He could talk to that better than anyone. And once you engaged him in a conversation, he would mesmerize you. He was just an incredible person. Everybody gravitated toward that, and they saw not only what he overcame, but they saw the children and what they needed to overcome, and it grew.
Hank interacted with the children all the time, and Hank was very at home with the children, and they fell in love with him.
He just was full of love. You'd see him in the school, you'd see him in the halls. I was fortunate enough to have the time to be present a lot, and his interaction, the kids lit up. So I got involved here as a parent first. My son Brandon, when he was 2 years old, we had him evaluated by his neurologist, and she said, whatever you do, you get him into, as it was known then, the Human Resource School. Brandon was born as a twin B with cerebral palsy. It was suggested that he come to Viscardi, and he just thrived. He just loved to come. Hank was one of a kind. He looked at Brandon coming to him as a gift to him, whereas I looked at Brandon coming to him was a gift to me.
Dr. Viscardi's impact is truly national and even global, but his roots were always here on Long Island. Dr. Viscardi showed us that if you can see it, you can be it. And here we are, 72 years later, still a leading force in inclusive education and employment, but also leading edge innovators and culture creators.
If I could summarize Hank in one word, the word would be exceptional. That really says it all.